Both of the scriptures, First Old Testament and Gospel, are very interesting studies for theologians. And just to bring forth some of commentaries and discussions. First reading, we have Adam and Eve in the garden. And how many trees are they not eating from? What fruit from how many trees are they not supposed to eat from? One. Could it be two? What? Well, there are two significant trees mentioned. One is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and the other is the tree of life, which is like immortality. Now, if you go to the end of the Bible in the book of Revelation, you'll find the tree of life there. So the tree of life is bookends to the Bible. It's in the beginning in Genesis, at the end in Revelation. And Jesus is really the tree of life, because Jesus gives us eternal life. For a long time, I, seminarian and priest, thought Adam and Eve had never eaten from the tree of life in the garden. And the reason why I thought that is because after they sinned and God kicked them out of the garden, and then he put the angels in front with the sword and said, don't let them back in because they might eat from the tree of life. Right? That's the rest of the story. And why is that? Because God didn't want them, if the tree of life symbolizes eternity, he didn't want them eternally in a fallen state. Get them out of there now. So I just always assumed, until this semester, I learned something new. I know, you can hardly believe it. That they never ate from the tree of life. But you know what? The original design of God is a soul with immortality. And the original gift was that they would live forever until they sinned. It is actually a dogma of the church that death enters because of sin. Evolution would like us to think death is just part of evolving, but the Christian world says no. For humans, death comes because of sin. So maybe in fact they did eat from that tree for a short time before they sinned. That just occurred to me this year. Now that tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Why is that tree of knowledge of good and evil? Why does it even exist? Maybe it's because the angels fell first. Why is there evil in a tree? That's my question. Well, if the angels fell before humanity, and all of creation was affected, disharmonized, suddenly we can have evil in a tree. Well, so they ate and they fell. And here's the irony of it. The liar tempted them to believe that God was a liar. The liar, Satan, said, God told you not to eat from that tree? Oh, but God doesn't want you to eat from that tree, because if you do, you're going to be like God. You see, suddenly he made God and Adam and Eve rivals. Now somehow they're in a competition. And they distrust God. Yeah, maybe God didn't want us to eat because he doesn't want to be as powerful as he is. Trust. Very important. Now, you know, of all those fruits of the trees that were eaten in the garden, do you know when Adam, or the sons of Adam and Eve, daughters, started to eat flesh? There's no sign that they were eating animals or flesh in the garden. That comes after the flood in Noah. If you read the scriptures, after Noah, they start eating animals. And so there is some question mark, you know, is it because of fallen nature that we do that? Fast forward to the gospel, Jesus in the desert, he takes the lie and he overturns it. The lie of Satan is presented to Jesus. Now, we have desiring elements in our body and soul. We desire food, sexual intimacy, drink, sleep, at the level of the abdomen. That's where we have those kind of desires. We desire greatness and indeed vanity at the level of the heart. And we have higher desires at the level of the mind, the desire for knowledge and wisdom. Now, what has happened in our nature is, though we are good of nature, we become disharmonized. And the lower desires overtake the higher desires or the higher knowledges. And we do not do what we want, but sometimes what we hate. So Jesus was tempted first by Satan, turn that stone into bread. That's a lower desire for food. That's a good desire to desire food, but if that reigns over the other goals, we're upside down. Then Satan said, you know what, from this parapet, look at all the kingdoms. I'll give them all to you if you worship me. That's the level of the heart. That's vanity, aggrandizement, grandiosity. Greatness, but twisted. And Jesus rejects those temptations. He said, I will not let the lower passions overtake the higher, and I will not let your lies trick me. Now, all the quotes that Jesus makes in the desert, they all come from the book of Deuteronomy. They all come in reference to 40 years of the Israelites in the desert. They kind of messed up in the desert. Do you know they made a golden calf in the desert? And Jesus is taking the desert and he's making it right. Now to you and to me. One of the things that was so harmful about the devil's work is we began to distrust God. Do you distrust God in some way? Would you distrust God in some calling? I'm afraid, Lord, you don't call me to that, please, that he would cause you to be unhappy. Would you distrust God that he would provide for you in a difficult situation, or that he has your future in mind? Would you distrust him to be your advocate if you were sick with coronavirus? That's out there, isn't it? Coronavirus. That's real. We have fears of certain things, but unfortunately sometimes we also fear God. And Satan has brought that lie. God is true goodness, true love, true loyalty. So let's examine where we might distrust God and ask for greater trust.